Happening now, Mayor Adams is discussing the NYPD's new neighborhood safety teams. Let's go to it.
The mayor, and each and every one of us with a stake in public safety in this city. That we will never stop fighting for New Yorkers. That we will relentlessly confront crime and disorder in every New York City neighborhood. In order to do that effectively, we must merge focused, intelligence-based policing with thorough and clear community engagement. And with the rollout of our neighborhood safety teams in commands across the city, we are doing exactly that. These teams represent the next era of responsive, responsible crime fighting, built and strengthened by neighborhood-specific concerns of the people who live and work there. Together, we will identify and pursue the true drivers of crime in our city and reinforce our efforts to get them off our streets, build strong cases for prosecution, and hold them accountable for their actions. This is all a part of that mission, that anyone who threatens our city and its people in any way will always be answerable to the law. That's our job. And now we're adding the next public safety element to help us do it even better. Today, we will be giving you a closer look at the staffing, training, and development of our neighborhood safety teams. To start, they will be focused on a handful of commands that account for the vast majority of our city shootings. And they will be working hand in hand with the community members to better shape our enforcement strategies. These deployments are flexible and will adapt to changing conditions in the field, always with the ultimate goal of safeguarding New Yorkers where they need it most. In a moment, our Chief of Department, Ken Corey, will talk about the highly sensitive vetting process for recruiting team members and selection, and provide some further operational details. Then our Chief of Training, Juanita Holmes, will discuss extensive, rigorous training regimens that each team member will undergo before deployment, and that they will continue to undergo throughout their time in the unit. As I said, we will never stop fighting for New Yorkers, and we will never stop looking for effective, successful ways to do so. We are looking forward to this next chapter, and we are very proud of the incredible officers who are leading the way. I'd like to introduce the mayor, Mayor Adams.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Promise made, promise kept. I made the promise to New Yorkers on the campaign trail that we will put in place a specialized unit that's going to zero in on gun violence. I also made the promise that we were not going to duplicate the problems we had in the past, the problems I spent much of my law enforcement and elected career at identifying and fighting against. We're here. We're here on this day to announce the rollout of this promise. You heard me state over and over again, there are many rivers that must be dammed to stop feeding the sea of violence in our city. This is one of them. And we're proud to have someone like Chief Holmes, a career in law enforcement, and a large number of family members that are part of the NYPD. She has the understanding, she has the ability to turn out these officers and make sure they have the balance of public safety and justice. They go together. You can't have one without the other. But let's not kid ourselves. This is a dangerous assignment. This is a dangerous assignment. You don't put your men and women on the front line of a dangerous assignment without giving them the tools, the support, the training, and make sure they have the emotional intelligence to make the right decisions while they are out there doing the job, putting themselves in front of the fire to protect New Yorkers take a special skill and ability. Every man and woman that is part of the police department is qualified to do the job. But who we are producing here is an elite group of men and women with specialized training and skill set to zero in on gun violence and to do something that is unique, that the police commissioner clearly understood, to have a real version of community involvement and engagement. That is a new corner we are turning in policing and public safety, allowing the community residents to identify where the hot spots are, who are the problems on their blocks or in their neighborhoods, partnering with our clergy groups and organizations to allow feedback from them. The community is going to assist in the deployment and identification and the strategies that are needed to remove guns off their streets. They are tired of the gun violence. I've heard it on the campaign trail, and I'm hearing it as the mayor. We are going to defeat gun violence, not only that's taking place in our city, but we're going to collaborate with our federal and state agencies to attack this problem across our country, because it can't be just New York's problem. Crime and gun violence is rampant throughout this entire country. We have to stop the flow of guns. We have to stop those illegal manufacturers that are placing guns on our streets across the entire country. We have a new crisis that we're facing, the ghost guns, adding to the problem. We have a system of producing guns and distributing those guns in the inner cities of America. And what is not going to happen? I'm not going to put these men and women on the front line and have someone put a foam in their face while they're taking action and try to critique their ability to do their job and allow the noise to determine that they're not doing their job correctly. They have my support. I'm not sending them on the front line and abandon them while they're on that front line. They're going to protect New Yorkers, and we're going to do it right. We're going to make sure we use the balance of public safety to do it right. We're going to engage with the public. We're going to let people know that it is not acceptable to be in this city carrying weapons. And we're not going to get caught up in the politics of fighting crime, because it's not going to matter what laws are passed anywhere in this state. We're going to focus on our job. Our job, and the river we will dam, is to stop those who are carrying guns on our streets. We're going to ask our partners throughout this city and country to assist us in doing so. With that assistance or without that assistance, the New York City Police Department is going to do its job. This is an important day as we evolve to an era of dealing with the violence we're witnessing in our streets. And I want to thank the men and women who decided to take upon this awesome responsibility. It's a challenging responsibility to identify the guns and remove them from our streets. When others are running away from the violence, they will be running towards that violence. And as New Yorkers, they deserve all the support that they need to get this job done. And so I want to personally thank you, officers, for what you're doing on behalf of the people of this city.
Chief Court.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your vision. And on behalf of the men and women in the New York City Police Department, I thank you for your support. So the mission of the neighborhood safety teams is to proactively suppress violent major crimes and illegal gun possession through precision policing. But let me walk you through a little bit of how we got to where we are today. And it started with Mayor Adams' vision to create an anti-gun unit. We looked at the concerns and the complaints raised during the reform process. We listened. We identified past mistakes. We addressed those issues in this plan. I then presented this plan to community leaders, elected officials, clergy groups, crisis management violence interrupters in those same communities where these teams are being deployed, and we asked them for their feedback. And we took that feedback and we incorporated it into our plan. We adjusted it based on the feedback that we received. So the plan that you see today, these teams that you see today, are the result of that feedback. And it really comes down to three key elements: selection, oversight, and training. So for selection, first of all, every officer in a neighborhood safety team volunteered for this assignment. As the mayor mentioned, this is a difficult assignment. It is a potentially extremely dangerous assignment, going after the people who drive violence in this city. After they volunteer, they have to be vetted and recommended by their commanding officer. That recommendation then gets passed to the borough commanding officer for his or her approval. Then it gets forwarded up to the office of the chief of department, ultimately to our risk management bureau. Our risk management bureau takes a deep dive into every one of these officers, and they review things like their evaluations, any disciplinary history, any use of force incidents that they've been involved in, any civilian complaints they've received, any community commendations that they've received, the accuracy of reports that they file, their sick record, and perhaps very important, a tool that we didn't have available to us just a few years ago, a review of their body-worn camera footage. So we can see how these officers interact with the members of the community that they encounter, and we can ensure that they have the right disposition for this very challenging assignment. Then it comes to how we oversee it, how we make sure that these officers are doing their job as they were trained to, that they're doing it properly, that they're doing it constitutionally, and ideally that they are treating everyone with dignity and respect. So each team of 5 police officers has a sergeant that is solely dedicated to their supervision. That sergeant has no other responsibilities other than to supervise those 5 police officers. If we get to a point where we deploy more than one team in a precinct, a lieutenant will be added to oversee those teams, and that lieutenant will have no other responsibilities than the oversight of this team. We're keeping that span of supervision, the span of control, very, very small. There are multiple layers of review that take place. First at the precinct level, by the team supervisor, the lieutenant, the precinct commander, then by an executive in the rank of inspector or above at the patrol borough level who reviews their actions, by the office of the chief of crime control strategies, by people in the chief of department's office, and our risk management bureau has a team of people that is solely dedicated to reviewing and evaluating the performance of the neighborhood safety team. That's not to criticize them. It is to critique their performance, to find ways that we can make it better, to find ways that we can continue to improve. And ultimately, because of the work that they are doing, it falls within the scope of oversight of the court-appointed federal monitor, who will also have access to all of their materials and be reviewing them. The final piece that I mentioned was training, and our Chief of Training, Chief Juanita Holmes, will discuss that in greater detail. Chief?
Thank you. Good morning, and welcome to New York City's Police Academy. Today, I'm very excited to announce that we have just about completed the Neighborhood Safety Team training course, which began on February 8th. The 7-day training consisted of, scenario-based constitutional policing, courtroom testimony, investigative encounters, car stop workshops, tactical training, and more importantly, community relations. We are looking forward to the great work these men and women will be doing out there every single day. Notice I emphasized on New York City's Police Academy, because make no mistake about it, Crime fighting is definitely a shared responsibility. I know the community is looking forward to this, NYPD is looking forward to this, and hopefully together we'll be able to combat a lot of this gun violence that's going on out here today. I now would like to introduce, speaking about community relations, the great Bishop Sewell. Thank you.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank the Honorable Mayor for bringing about his word during his campaign. He said he would bring about safety to our community, and that the community is very, very important to him and to us. Let me say, 2 decades ago, I lost a parishioner from gun violence. 14-year-old boy, a prominent basketball star, academic, doing well, and an intact family. Yet, because we didn't have a team like this, playing basketball, he was shot dead. So this is very passionate to me, and I still feel the pain, and so does his family. Let me say that I've had the pleasure of working with Chief Holmes in the 81st Precinct, and I'm very, very confident that the community is at rest because this pilot project is coming into being. First, gun safety is an important endeavor for us. The African American and brown community are affected most by gun violence. We're only asking that our neighborhoods be patrolled by the mantra that's on the police department's cars. That is professionalism, respect, and courtesy. But the community and all of the meetings that I've had want gun violence to stop in our area.
Give me my cards.
Sure, thank you very much. So I think the incident that you're referring to occurred in the 4-3 precinct on Monday night. So the neighborhood safety team in the 43rd precinct performing their first tour as a neighborhood safety team, about 2 hours into their tour at 6:37 p.m., stops an individual at the corner of Pugsley and Haviland Avenues there in the South Bronx. That stop was based on various factors that led them to reasonable suspicion to stop and investigate, and the individual was ultimately found to be carrying a 9mm pistol, a ghost gun. And that ghost gun was equipped with a laser sight and was loaded with 8 rounds of ammunition. And this is the firearm in question here. But beyond the fact that they were successful 2 hours into their tour in taking a dangerous illegal firearm off the street, it's more about the individual. And we said that the mission of these teams involved precision policing. So let me tell you a little bit about the individual who they stopped and was in possession of this gun. He's a 20-year-old Blood gang member. He's been arrested 3 times in the past 12 months in possession of an illegal gun. He's been arrested 4 times since 2018 in possession of an illegal gun. In February of 2018, he was arrested for a gunpoint carjacking. In May of 2019, he stabbed his victim during a robbery. In March of 2021, he was arrested for a non-fatal shooting. In October, Halloween 2021, he's arrested with a firearm while fleeing the scene of a non-fatal shooting. And then on Monday, March 14th, is this current arrest. This is what we talk about when we talk about drivers of violence in our community, the very small number of people who are responsible for the overwhelming majority of the violence. And this is the mission, these are the individuals that these brave men and women have volunteered to go after on a daily basis.
So hold on. We need to really hear what he's just shared. That's what we need to hear. If you take that one example, you'll see the failure of all those rivers. The flow of guns here, the ghost gun, the repeated offender that made his mind up that he is going to create violence in our city. That individual has a total disregard for any of us. And we continuously put him back on our streets and say, we're going to wait until you kill not one person, individual, but several. Several. This is the poster child of a failing system of a small number of people who have made up their minds. We are going to be dangerous in this city, and we can care less of what you do. And we arrest them, they go out, they arrest them, and we put them right back on the street. Over and over again. That case is horrific. Horrific. This is what we are fighting against. This is what these officers are fighting against. How could you not be jaded when you go out and take the gun off the street, and then when you walk down the block, you see the person back on the street again the next day? That's what this battle is about. We're going to continue to take the guns off the street, but we need help.
What quantifiable metrics have you established to determine whether the unit is successful? And two, how will you track abuse specifically?
Well, the metrics we're going to use that the unit is successful is when we stop seeing the shootings in our city, and every day we wake up and you have to report another crime scene. It's not just about taking the guns off, but it's building confidence with the community, organizations, and groups. Those are the metrics we're using. We're going to use the metrics that the communities are comfortable with these men and women who are given this difficult assignment, and you see a substantial decrease in the gun violence, the shootings, and the homicides in our city. We want a safe city. And the abuse is going to be tracked in several ways. 1 in 5. A sergeant that's going to be assigned to their officers. We're going to review video. We're going to review reports. We're going to monitor the residents in the community. We're going to stay in contact to see how are our officers doing. And then we're going to do repeated training. Historically, you have once or twice a year doing in-service training. No, we want to continuously train the mental muscle of our officers so that they are aware of the conditions that they are facing and don't get trapped into the muscle memory of not doing the training that they receive. So it's a constant monitoring. And we did not have, as the chief stated, we did not have the body cameras previously. We're going to utilize those body cameras to identify how those officers are responding. And we're not going to allow the games of turning off your camera anytime you make an encounter. If we have officers doing that, they're not suitable for this unit.
And how do you define substantial reduction in gun crime?
When my city is safe, when I don't have any shootings in my city, that's a substantial reduction.
Juliet.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, given your frustration with that particular example, and this person is back on the street over and over, how do you get that person off the street, and what kind of case has to be made regarding him to get him off the street?
You know, we have layers of government in this city and country. Our layer is to remove the firearm and dangerous people. The other layers are beyond our span of control. We have to dam the rivers, particularly those who are carrying guns. And I'm hoping that my partners in Albany will look at the provision of the law that states if a person is carrying a gun and is not exposed, then he's treated as either juvenile or is not considered as a more severe penalty. Any gun, exposed or not, should be treated in a severe manner. And I'm hoping that we look at that in Albany.
Do you have any realistic expectation that that's going to happen this year?
Yes, I just continue to believe.
Kevin.
Yes, this is actually for Chief Corey. The review that you mentioned, the review by the risk management team, what's going to be the procedure? Is it going to be like a random sampling of incidents, or based on severity of cases, or is it going to be triggered by complaints? What's the procedure?
So every arrest gets reviewed as a matter of course. Every use of force incident gets reviewed as a matter of course. That already happens at several layers already, and now it'll be elevated to a higher level at the Risk Management Bureau as well for them to review. They will also conduct a sampling of the officers' videos. They will sample a percentage of them to see their performance in incidents where there is no arrest made, where there is no use of force, to ensure that it's all being done legally, constitutionally, and according to best practices. And I use the analogy, I equate it to why the coach watches the game day film even when the team wins, right? Because we identify what we did really well, and we identify areas where we can do even better.
Chief Corey,
Hold on, and it's very important. I don't want you to, these important aspects, I don't want this to be skipped over. We're going to review even when force was not used. We are going to be in a constant state of how do we get better. We're going to look at the game day film over and over again. We're not going to wait for a crisis or a tragedy to happen or a mistake to happen. We're going to be in a constant state of monitoring how do we become better? How do we make sure that we may not have had a crisis, but how do we make sure we learn from what we encounter? That is a very important part. And the monitor was here to review, as Chief Holmes shared with me, what we are doing. So we're in a constant state of monitoring so that we can ensure we get the best product to keep our city safe without the abuses that we witnessed in the past. I think she wants to answer another question.
For Chief Corey, two questions. The first is, do you have the data on the number of officers in each precinct? Is it an equal number of officers in each precinct that's involved? And secondly, can you talk a little bit more about the kind of community and public outreach you're doing? I know previously there was neighborhood policing. They would have sector cops who you could call. Their numbers were publicized for neighbors to use. They would go to precinct community council meetings. Can you talk if there's anything different or anything added?
Sure. So to your first question about the number of officers, so neighborhood safety teams are being rolled out in 30 precincts, 4 PSAs, right, 4 housing police service areas. Obviously, those police service areas fall within the broader precinct. Those 30 precincts were specifically selected because in the past 13 months, they have accounted for 80% of the shootings in New York City. So those are the areas where the need for this is greatest. Each precinct will start with 1 sergeant and 5 police officers. So 34 total commands, 1 sergeant and 5 police officers in each. And I'm not going to try to do the math in my head right now, but you can figure it out. But we will be training up additional people beyond that, so that in the event that one of these officers can no longer perform their duties, officers get injured. This is dangerous work. There is another trained, qualified, vetted officer ready to step in and fill their shoes. What was the second part of your question?
How this outreach differs from what we've seen previously with neighborhood policing.
So I did, as I mentioned, the broader listening sessions where I presented the plan to community groups in all of the affected communities. After these teams are trained, when they go back to their commands, and this process has begun, if you look on some of the social media pages for the various precincts where these teams are active, you'll see that these meetings have already begun to take place, where the team sits down in a round table with community members, and they hear the concerns, and they get the feedback directly from the communities. They'll also be introduced to the entire community at a community council meeting, which is a precinct council meeting, which is open to the public. And then we want that engagement to continue, and that happens best one-on-one. So we provide the forum, we introduce the officers to the community, and all of these officers have been working in those precincts for a number of years already. They're not dropped in there on Monday. They've worked in these precincts for years. So they already have a rapport with many of these community members.
Chief Corey, please. Chief, how many officers, if any, used to be in anti-crime? And could you elaborate with some specifics on the neighborhood feedback that you incorporated into the new training?
Sure. So I don't have an answer for you on how many of the officers used to be in anti-crime. We'd have to dig into that a little bit. I mean, anti-crime's been gone for almost 2 years now. Many of those officers moved on to other assignments. In terms of the feedback that was received, it was several. You know, we did get encouragement that people want this. They want the guns out of their community, as the bishop mentioned. They're tired of the gun violence. They also expressed concerns that we did not repeat the mistakes of the past, so we walked them through the plan, we walked them through the oversight, we told them about the layers of engagement and review that are going to take place, and then they were afraid that they were going to lose something else that they had, that they were going to lose their neighborhood coordination officers, for example. So I reassured them that, no, that wasn't the case, that this supplements everything going on. Oh, and the final piece, I think, to that, or the biggest concern that I heard, was that we were just going to drop this team of strange officers into the community that were unfamiliar with the community and the neighborhood and its residents. And again, all of these officers are working in the precincts that they've been for a number of years.
Mr. Mayor, I have two questions for you. First of all, since this first arrest had to do with a ghost gun, I wonder how the prevalence of ghost guns has made the job of these teams more difficult, because these are untraceable weapons. And my second question has to do with the fact that when you talk to a lot of people, they tell you that they're worried about random fear, the random crimes that are sort of, hard to predict, like the museum guy or the person who shot homeless people. So how will these teams help to allay those fears and get people to come back to the city?
First, ghost guns, and I want the chief to talk about the arrest they made, where there was a series of ghost guns that were discovered. Ghost guns, they are a real problem. The fact that, we were fighting those manufacturers outside our borders, now we have the ability, based on technology, to produce the guns right within our city. That's a real problem for us. And if we don't get our federal lawmakers to dam that river, to really charge people when they have the parts, we're treating the crimes differently if they're disassembled and not assembled. Our laws must catch up to the savviness of those who are criminal elements. They adjust rapidly. And to be able to produce a gun with the technology that's available now, we should all be alarmed about how this makes this fight a more increasingly dangerous and a wider scope of what these officers must do. Now, these officers have their assignment of dealing with the gun violence, precision policing matched with precision resources. We're not asking them to do the role we have to do with the thefts in stores that we're witnessing, to deal with the homeless crisis that we're witnessing, to deal with the random acts of people coming in the museum. All of this is part of our overall crime plan, and they have a component on that. Right now, their focus is dealing with the guns that we're dealing with. We have other components of the police department that's dealing with those other issues. But Marsha, let's be clear. Our city has reached a point where any and everything goes. There's just no respect for your neighbor in this city. There's a small element of this city that they believe they don't have to respect other New Yorkers. When you walk in the store and take whatever you want off the shelves and walk out and have that store closed down and all the low-wage employees are going to lose their jobs, when you just totally discount the right that people should be able to be on their roadways, we just reached a point in this city where the quality of life has eroded. And New Yorkers don't want that to happen. And I hear those New Yorkers. And we are in alignment with making sure our city is a respectful place. And we've lost that respect over the years.
Miles? Just to follow up on Rocco's question about the officers that may have been anti-crime, were there officers you identified that, through your vetting process, that could not return to this new model? And then secondly, as we follow up on the rivers that feed to this, what were the issues identified, that you've identified in your after-action report, about what was wrong with the old street crime anti-crime unit?
I'll answer that. The old street crime unit, here's what happened. Number one, many of the officers were hopping out of the cars, not identifying themselves. They were in complete civilian attire. You didn't know if they were police officers or if it was a rival gang or if it was someone committing a crime. These officers are going to be identified as police officers. Number two, there was a mindset that if there was a crime problem in a particular precinct or zip code, then everyone in that area was classified as being a criminal, particularly if they were a young person, a male of color. And so we were stopping, frisking everyone just a wide net. We're not doing that now. We are using our field intelligence information. We're identifying those who are known trigger pullers and participating in illegal behavior, and we're zeroing in on those individuals. That is what precision policing is about. Number 3, there was no community engagement. The police commissioner made it clear when she came on board. You know, everyone was saying, why aren't you rolling this out the next day that you're here? She made it clear, no, we want to get this right. And she went in and spoke with leaders like Bishop Seabrook and others and say, give us your critique as we create this unit with the balance of what the concerns were and our balance of understanding how do you keep people safe. Now we came up with a product that New Yorkers could be proud of. Now, does it mean we're going to stop evolving? No, it does not. We're going to do an evaluation. What else we must do to improve policing properly and rebuilding trust? Because there's a duality here. We must rebuild the trust that was eroded, and we must build the public safety that was eroded, and we're saying we could have both together. This is an opportune time to do so if we involve each other in the process.
We go to Mala. Can Chief Corey answer if any officers cannot return?
So again, I don't know how many of the officers who applied had previously been assigned to anti-crime, and the only list that we vetted were those that had already been approved by their commanding officer, but there was about a 15 to 20% of those officers were deemed not suitable for this assignment for various reasons.
So everyone that applied didn't get in. We need to be clear on that. We were not desperate and say, just because you volunteer, we want you. No. You had to have the right social emotional intelligence, demeanor, crime fighting tactics. If you're going to be an elite group to go after a particular problem, you have to have the level of items we believe were important.
Mr. Mayor, you spoke about one of the key elements is being able to identify the officers, having them in uniform. I'm assuming this is the uniform that they're in.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could speak about that decision to make the officers identifiable, and if you believe they can be as effective as the old teams, and also if you think that they may be targets because they're doing very dangerous work.
Well, every officer that puts on a uniform and shield is a target to those bad, dangerous, violent people. We see that over and over again. The mere fact that they respond. Officer Rivera Mora, they walked into an apartment and were assassinated. They are a target, the mere fact that they're in this profession, to dangerous people, and we have a number of dangerous people in this city. Being in an unmarked car assists in the element of surprise, the element of unpredictability of policing. If the bad guys believe all they have to do is look out for a blue and white car, that's a dangerous, unfair disadvantage of public safety. And that is why we are doing a modified uniform version with unmarked vehicles that gives you the element of predictability and omnipresence and unpredictability. And so you have those who don't understand the practices of public safety will state that they want no unpredictability to policing. They just don't understand the principles of public safety.
All right, this will be our last question. Mark.
You mentioned precision policing and neighborhood communities, so I wanted you to address something, or at least go a little bit deeper. Commissioner Bratton, Commissioner O'Neill, Commissioner Shea, they all spoke about precision policing, and they all had some version of dealing with neighborhood communities. So, were they wrong? Did they not do it, or is this in some way going to be more precise or more bleeding?
Well, I think there's a uniqueness to my role as the mayor of the city. If you look at, which I think Police Commissioner Bratton was an excellent police commissioner, and I learned a lot from him during my days in the transit police, as well as my days in the New York City Police Department, turning around crime in the city when people all over the country believed we couldn't be safe. But there's a uniqueness that I bring to this role as the mayor. As a young man that was formerly arrested, beat by police officers, went in the police department, spent 22 years fighting for reform and safety together, and now understanding from that personal and professional experience what are the needs to get what the product we're looking for. As the bishop stated, people want to be safe, but not at the expense of being treated in a disgraceful manner. I know we can get that. I did it as a police officer. And so my life story is allowing us to get it right and picking the right police commissioner, the right commanders, the right individual to train us, the right relationship to make sure these officers can do their job, and the right officers. This is the perfect combination that the people of this city, they have been looking for, and this is the day that we're rolling it out. Get Dean. If you don't get Dean, he's going to text me later.
Text me 20 years. So you started out by saying you're not going to allow politics or somebody with a cell phone stop this mission. But these guys are rolling out, and the community has told me, in Mustangs, Toyota Camrys, so they really don't know who they are until they jump out. And some people want to document it because the history, as you said, shows cops have done wrong in the past. What's your message to the community when they want to document? It's their right. You guys have cameras. We wouldn't know about a lot of horrible things in the community with policing and other crimes with others if people didn't document it. What's your message to the community when they want to document what's going on with trying to stay safe, getting guns off the street?
Without a doubt, and that is one thing that we're going to do. We're going to teach the public how to properly document. If an officer is on the ground wrestling with someone that has a gun, they should not have to worry about someone standing over them with a camera while they're wrestling with someone. If an officer is trying to prevent a dispute from taking place and de-escalate that dispute, they shouldn't have someone standing over their shoulders with a camera in their face, yelling and screaming out at them without even realizing what the encounter is all about. There's a proper way to police, and there's a proper way to document. If your iPhone can't catch that picture with you being at a safe distance, then you need to upgrade your iPhone. Stop being on top of my police officers while they're carrying out their jobs. That is not acceptable, and it won't be tolerated. That is a very dangerous environment you are creating when you're on top of that officer who has an understanding of what he's doing at the time, yelling police brutality, yelling at the officer, calling them names. Now he has to worry about who's behind him. Is he part of the process that he's trying to de-escalate? That has gotten out of control. You can safely document an incident, but we could use that footage to analyze what happened. But that's not what's happening right now in our city. We're finding people who are standing on top of the officer while he's involved in a dangerous encounter. Not acceptable. It's not going to continue to happen.